What time's the game?
At 6.
As you can
Game's at
expect,
6 tonight.
not necessarily on my radar this week against Savannah State.
It's not on nobody's radar. I'm coming because, like I tell Hurricane fans, and especially Hurricane video makers, these are games. You have to make games. You have to support the team. I say this all the time. I know you hear it on my channel a lot. If you do Miami Hurricane videos and you don't go to games, then I kind of don't respect you as much, because it's like you have to see the atmosphere. You have to see the atmosphere. You have to understand what it's really like. The tailgating at Miami games are different than anybody's in the country. It's just crazy. So many people, so many different nationalities of people, different food, everybody having all kind of fun. It's music blasting. It's just different, and you have to be there to understand it. So that's another reason why I do this. You know what I'm saying?
So with your channel this week, the talk out there from the people that watch you, considering what happened on Sunday night, what's the vibe like? What are people saying?
Actually, all year long on me has been last 2 years. Alonzo, stop being so negative on Rick. Alonzo, stop being so negative on Rick. And then after this game, if you go look at the comment section, Alonzo, you've been right. So I just say I watched him coach so often, and because I live in South Carolina, not from there, but I live there. So, Georgia, South Carolina play every year. I'm in SEC country, and I watched those type of games from him too often, and I've also watched him lose more big games than he won. He has a losing record against winning teams, against winning programs, and that's one stigma that I know about him. And I'm not giving up on him, but I feel like he shows favoritism. There's no reason why Malik Rozier should be playing quarterback. No disrespect to the young man. If I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose with a freshman that has the opportunity to grow than a fifth-year senior, that his career is basically over with. Unless he has a miraculous turnaround, he's not going to go to the NFL. And it's a lot of infighting in the team from some of the interviews I've seen. So a change has to be made. In my opinion, Coach Richt has to become a better leader. He really does have to become a better leader. And the offensive coaches have to get it together, because I don't blame the defense for what happened in that game. I kept hearing a lot of people comment, well, he got a lot of pressure on him. Yeah, he got a lot of pressure on him in the second half when they were up by 17 points, because now they know we have to throw the ball. So they threw every blitz they could at us. We have 5 offensive linemen, and they're sending 6, 7 people. You can't block everybody. So they blitzed us and they got to them. But the reason why it happened was because we couldn't move the ball. So
being a head coach, there's a number of facets to it, running the entire program. So we could talk forever about what a head coach needs to be responsible for, and looking at the top coaches in the country, what they do well and what they may need to improve on. And some are more hands-on, and some are more CEO, and they build a family of coaches that they trust, and then become longtime assistants and that sort of thing. But when it comes to game day, and preparing your team for game day, there's been generally 2 buckets of approach here. And one is the psychology of the game. Can you prepare your team to be focused, laser focused, confident, poised, not to make mistakes, and just play all out, play free, play loose, but play fundamentally sound and disciplined, but play loose and not to lose and to play free? And then also, can you and your staff game plan and out game plan the other coaching staff? That's how I see the preparation for a game. And I got to say, you got out coached on both accounts.
I've seen, and this is his 3rd year at Miami, And I've only seen 2 games where he had his team totally prepared, and they dominated those 2 games, and that was Virginia Tech and Notre Dame. Besides that, I have not seen a game where he has had the team. I've seen games where Manny Diaz has had the defense locked in and prepared, but I've seen games where the offense has just never happened. And like I say, people get mad at me, but I put the onus on the guy who gets paid. And you made a point of more. You have CEOs and you have people that's more hands on. Typically, when you run a program, whether it's a football program or a company, if you have your president of the company hands on everything, typically that company doesn't make it, because now you become a dictatorship and everything has to be your way. So you decide not to listen to other people, and it breeds contentment, and things don't tend to work. You have to surround yourself around people you trust and people that know how to do their job, not just the job that you want them to do, and that's how you succeed. As much as Nick Saban didn't like Lane Kiffin, he trusted him with his offense. You would see them argue on the sideline, but he trusted him with his offense, and he got a national championship out of it. You understand what I'm saying? For some reason, Rick doesn't trust anybody. Don't get me started about John. Quarterbacks haven't gotten better at all. Actually, they've decreased, and we have a young guy who's the same age as the quarterbacks that are playing on the team now, who really has no experience. This is his first time coaching experience at all, and he's coaching one of the most important positions in football, which is quarterback coach, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's not me being negative; it's me just speaking facts. You can't put someone that young with zero experience at a great school like the University of Miami and expect to succeed. That doesn't. I can't remember the last time that happened at any school. It's definitely not going to happen at Miami. It's tough, and we could win 102-0 tonight, and I would be happy, believe me. But I won't be impressed because it's Savannah State. That whooping last week really put things in perspective for me, and I'm to the point now. If we have to take the rest of the season how it is, but if he continues to decide to call plays and continues to use Malik Rozier as quarterback, and we continue to falter the way we have on offense the past couple of years, it's going to be time for an offensive coaching change.
So I want to hit on 2 things you hit on: the quarterback situation and then also the outlook for the rest of the season. So the quarterback situation, what I found odd was that we all expected, okay, Rocher, trying to get his name pronunciation right based on everything I heard before the game last week, Rocher played awful the last 4 games of last season, and even before that, he was helped out by playmakers against inferior teams most of the time. Not that the guy didn't throw a good pass the whole season, but he was underwhelming. There was no question about that. 45% more interceptions than TDs the last 4 games. Just bad.
That's horrible.
2 studs come into the program. One has an extra year on the other. So we're talking about N'Kosi Perry and Jaron Williams. And most people thought that Perry would be the next in line. So we thought legitimately there is a quarterback battle starting once the season ends. Bam. Wisconsin wins. The Orange Bowl's over. There's a quarterback battle. These guys are battling it out. We're going into spring. And quickly into spring practice, Mark Richt says, Rocher's the starter. And that's it.
That annoyed me. It annoyed me. That's the selfishness, and I'm trying to figure out the word to say, but that's a very arrogant statement by Mark Richt. And that's why we got beat the way we got beat, is because of his arrogance sometimes. He can build a program. He built Georgia. He's doing great things at Miami when it comes to facilities and getting donations and everything like that. But one thing I say about recruiting is Miami recruits itself. We're in the greatest football area in the world. You could come here and coach at Miami and recruit well. You know what I'm saying? Seriously, you
This
can.
is true. This is true. You got him in your
Al
backyard.
Golden recruited well.
But
People,
it has been better. He has brought in better recruits.
oh
His
yeah, he
recruiting
has.
classes are ranked higher than what they were before.
Yeah, but there are situations behind that. Before we were on probation, we got off probation his first year there. So those things happen when you're limited scholarships, and you have FSU and Florida and Alabama saying don't go to Miami because they're going to get the death penalty. So Al Golden had his hands tied, and I'm not an Al Golden fan, but I try to look at the whole picture. If you don't have any sanctions against you anymore, now you got new facilities coming in and all that, and you're Mark Richt, you have a name. Of course, you're going to recruit better than a guy who came from Temple facing the death penalty.
Absolutely.
I mean, so those things really matter, and still Al Golden. Look how many NFL players that Al Golden put in. So it's not like we didn't have talent. And I keep saying it. The problem with Al Golden was the defense. When Mark Richt took over, everybody thought that the offense was going to have to carry the defense. And for the first 2 years, the defense has had to carry the offense. The offense has just gotten terrible. And if you look at the second half of last week, the second half of the game, why did he wait all the way to the fourth quarter to go to the spread? When I've been screaming, go to the spread from the first quarter. He goes to the spread, the end of the game, and we scored 2 touchdowns back to back. Why? But the first 2 plays of the game, he runs the ball right up the middle. It's like, what are you doing? Why? What are you? I'll tell you this here. Malik Rozier, I don't know if he's as bad or Mark Richt's as bad. And the reason why I say this, if you watch that game against Duke when Al Golden got fired and what's name was the interim coach.
Yep.
Malik Rozier came out there and destroyed Duke. I mean, he was like 8 for 8 or 9 for 9, and all the passes was deep down the middle of the field. We got Brevin Jordan at tight end. We have probably the best wide receiver group in the country. And we can't complete passes. We don't throw the ball to tight ends. We don't use the middle of the seam of the field. We don't use swing routes. We don't use quick slants. We just don't use any. It's either go deep or tuck the ball and run. We run 4 plays every game, and we're very predictable, and it's monotonous. And I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer. But he gets paid over $4 million a year. I expect more out of a guy who gets paid over $4 million a year. I'm a religious guy. I'm a Christian, but I don't need a youth pastor as my coach. I need a coach that can be a youth pastor. I'm just being honest.
That's absolutely right. The guy, for as much as we want to, when there's situations like what we saw at Ohio State earlier, and some situations like that, obviously. We expect some moral integrity out of these coaches, but let's be real. Otherwise, if they were just another faculty member on campus, then they'd make their $80,000 a year and they'd teach class, and that would be football class. But that's not the deal. They make $4 and $5 and $6 million a year, the high level coaches. And even if you go to like Oregon State, I was shocked when their coach left a couple years ago and they had to pay out his contract. He was making $3.5 million at Oregon State. So all these guys make a ton of money to win football games. That is their first job requirement. Otherwise, they're another teacher on campus making $80,000 a year, and that would be fine. But that's not the deal. There's too much money coming in.
And Miami fans are so fickle. We are the most fickle fans in the world. If we win, we go to games. If we lose, we don't. So it is definitely on the pressure on the coach to get the job done. And like I say, and I've told people, if he don't win this year, I remember I told you this at the last interview of last year, people are going to be calling for his head. And people tell me, no, we love him. After last week, people were calling for his head. And the reason why I say these things is I say them early because I don't want to be that guy that sit here and say, everything's going to be good, and it's not going to be good. I'll give you the opportunity. It's up to you. It's up to you to prove that you can do the job. I'm not getting paid that money. You're getting paid that money. But with me being a season ticket holder and everything like that, hold on one second, Mark. Hold on one second, Mark. Let me grab something.
Sure.
1 second.
So what I'm going to say here while Zoe's taking care of something is that I think the narrative would be a little bit different based on a few things here. Is if, first of all, we'll find out how good LSU is after they play some other good teams and play out their schedule. We'll find out how good they are. But coming into this, people thought LSU was going to have one of its worst teams in 15 or 20 years. They had their lowest preseason rank since 2000. So the expectation was that LSU is really talented, but they're not going to be a really good team. They've got a first-year quarterback who's never started against anybody, running backs that have never played, wide receivers who have never played. They're fortified on the defense. They're strong there. The offensive line's good. But that LSU, man, they're an unknown commodity. So that's number one. It's not like they were playing an LSU team that was considered, oh, this is a top 5 team in the country. That's number one. Number two, it would have been very disappointing, I'm sure, for Canes fans if they would have lost that game on a last-second field goal. It would have been like, oh, we couldn't get the job done. Big state. But when you go in against a team that's not supposed to be great and you get annihilated, it's 33-3 in the third quarter, and you look completely unprepared and overmatched, then that's really an issue with the preparation.
Especially when the talent level is, this is no disrespect to LSU. They are nowhere near as talented as us. I'm just being out there, nowhere near as talented as us. And not just that, we lost to Coach Ed Orgeron. When you get out-coached by Ed Orgeron, when you are Mark Richt and you get out-coached by Ed Orgeron, that has to be the lowest of the low. I can guarantee you, I will willing to bet anything that Dabo Swinney will not get out-coached by Ed Orgeron. It won't happen. You know what I'm saying? That won't happen. It just won't. He will not. You had 8 months to prepare for this game. It's not like this was a game that just came on the schedule. You had 8 months to prepare for this game. And we have like 4, 6, 5 receivers. You know what I'm saying? We have speed all over the field. There is no reason why. And then the special teams. We haven't been able to kick the ball in 2 years. I mean, it's unbelievable how unprepared we are. And when you are unprepared football program, that is all coaching. That is all coaching. That has nothing to do with players. When players are unprepared, that means the coaches did not prepare them. That's just facts. We have to get these guys prepared. They have to be ready to play football. They have to get an attitude. The one thing one reasons why I didn't want Rick as our coach is because he's too much of a nice guy. He doesn't have an attitude. He doesn't. There's nothing wrong with being nice. Like I said, be a youth pastor. But I want a guy like a Mike Leach who cares about killing other teams. A guy like Art Browse who says, who called out Nick Saban and said, basically, I want to whoop your ass. I don't think you can stop me. I want a guy like that with confidence and arrogance to say, I'm going at you. Not, we'll see. Nah, I want that confidence. I'm going to get off in a second because I got a few things I'll do. But I heard one thing, and I'm not sure it's true or not. I'm not 100%, so I'm just throwing, this is just speculation. And I know he got hurt, but Amon Richard got hurt a little bit. But I heard that he got pulled out of the game because he went off on Malik Rozier for throwing bad passes. And I think he hurt his knee because he had to, overstretch for a ball that Malik threw. And he hurt himself, and he went off on Malik, and you put him out of the game instead of going off on Malik. I haven't seen Mark Richt chastise Malik Rozier on the sideline one time since he's been coaching there. And that's just not being a coach. That's being a friend. That's not being a coach. When I'm wrong, you've told me I was wrong on this show. That's why I consider you a friend. I'm not always right. But if I'm always right, you're not my friend. If you tell me I'm always right, then you're not my friend. You're setting me up for failure. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to finish one point I started to make and wanted to get your feedback on, and I know you need to take off, is that it was just strange to me that you got a quarterback who, as you mentioned right out of the gate, uh, most likely it's happened, but we've got about a 95% certainty that a quarterback who played 13 games last year and played a game before that, so he's got about 15 or 16 games under his belt. He's not, and he's been on campus for 3 to 4 years. He's not going to be any better.
no,
So most likely that's the case. But even if he would have improved through the spring, through summer individual workouts, through fall camp in August, and then you would have said Malik Rozier has gotten so much better. He won the starting quarterback job, and that would have been announced sometime in August, that based on everything he did in the offseason, he's better. Then I could have trusted that until I saw him on the field. But to name him the starter right out of the gate, I'm thinking, well, we know he hasn't gotten better because he hasn't even played any football against anybody, and Rick's naming him the starter. So either there's just some ridiculous relationship going on there that he's so loyal to Malik Rozier that makes no sense. And number two, there's got to be something going on with N'Kosi Perry that he's not going to trust him to throw him in the battle.
I don't know what it is, but we hear this N'Kosi Perry and then Jaron Williams back and forth, and I'm for the N'Kosi Perry, and people make it seem, and this is no disrespect to Jaron Williams, but I watched N'Kosi at the spring game and I watched Jaron at the spring game, and they both played great, but N'Kosi played better, and people make it seem like Jaron Williams fans that really want to see him play. Jaron Williams' main offer was from Kentucky. That was who he was going to go to if he didn't go to Miami. So if he was as great as people think he was, his main offer would not have been Kentucky. You know, that's just what I'm throwing out there. So sure. Watch on the field. N'Kosi played football down here in Miami. He played football down here. No disrespect to Georgia football. Georgia football is not Miami football. It's a totally different animal. It's a totally different beast. These kids down here bleed this. This is what they do. Their Pop Warner games have 10,000 people out. They bleed this, you know, and I would take South Florida football play. If you gave, even with the offensive lines aren't big out here. If you gave me a 52-man roster of everybody from South Florida, and you can pick every other state in the country, and the only states that I will be a little concerned about, the first state I'll be a little concerned about is Georgia. The only other state, and I keep saying this, people get mad at me, would be Ohio. Because the state of Ohio, they bleed football and they bleed track. And all you got to do is look at the history of their track and field teams and look at the history of their football. So besides that, Texas, I'm not afraid of. They're soft. They've always been soft. Fast players who are soft. But Miami, it's not even the state of Florida. It's the state of Miami. Lauderdale, Broward, Dade County, these are the best football players in the world. So there's no reason why we should, you know, lose games the way we do. But I'm going to get up off of here because I got things I got to do, man. I do predict
stopping by, man.
I do predict a butt kicking tonight, though. We're gonna definitely kick butt against a high school team. We're gonna whoop them.
Yeah, I would think so. I think it's pretty safe this week.
I'm gonna do a live show after the game is over for about 45 minutes to an hour, and if you're available, I'm gonna give you a call, and then I'll come on with you if you're available to at least give you the insight, or we'll do something tomorrow before I leave Miami.
All right, yeah, give me a call so everybody hear that. Zoe's going to be on his channel right after the Miami game. So as soon as the game's over, within a few minutes, Zoe's going to be on his channel doing a live stream. So join him right there.
I appreciate it. And I think I've got the subscribers jumped up immediately last week, and I think it had a lot to do with you. So I definitely appreciate it. And 19 Savage is getting his chain. Is on the way. We had to get one made because we didn't have any Texas chains, so he had to get one made. So it's on the way. So,
all right, 19 Savage, getting the job done for both of us.
I just noticed something different about you, though.
What's that?
What is this in the background?
It's
not just a white wall anymore.
What's that? No,
it's not just a white wall anymore.
We moved around. We painted the walls.
Just look. Look at the helmets and stuff. You got helmets and
Got a
that's
few
what I'm
helmets
talking.
back there.
You're missing one though.
Oh yeah, I know it. I know it. We'll see what happened here was if you notice, I got six, so four of them are the teams that made the college football playoffs 2 years ago because that I was going to build a set and collect helmets. So I thought, well, with the college football playoff teams, I'll start there. And then the other two are Tennessee and Ole Miss. And the only reason I have those two is because they had a little bit of a swag sale at ESPN a few weeks ago, and they were the only two helmets, and they were cheap, so I just picked them up.
Well, I'm gonna make sure I send you a Miami one, and you got to get your Ohio State one up there. I'm gonna send you a Miami one. So
Ohio
this
State's
one,
right there.
okay, yeah, right here. Okay, so this one can be moved to the side, and my Miami one could be put right here. Matter of fact, yeah, this one could be moved. The Tennessee one can be moved to the side.
Well, yeah,
My
I'm
Miami.
gonna get some of the major players in here: Miami, Notre Dame, USC, Texas, etc.
All right, Mark. I appreciate it, my
All
brother.
right, so have a good time, man.
You too, bro.
Talk
Thanks.
to you later.
All
All right.
right.
So yeah, join Zoe right after the game. So right after Miami plays Savannah State, games in the books. You jump online and you check out his channel. He'll have a live stream with analysis there. So I was in the process of running through the schedule for today,
I'm not in there.
the TV schedule, and letting you know what I'm going to be watching. So anybody who's watching this after the fact, of course, this is going to post after we're done here. So if you're catching me about halfway through, you can obviously see what you missed. All you have to do is wait a couple minutes after the show's over, and this will process and post. And we will wrap it up here in the next half hour. I want to leave myself and you some time to get prepared for the big noon kickoff. So we left this at 7 o'clock tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, Clemson, Texas A&M kickoff. I will be locked into Iowa State in particular, and possibly the ending of Georgia, South Carolina, if that's close. But then, of course, Texas A&M, Clemson, that's a marquee matchup. May not be a close game for 60 minutes, but a marquee matchup that has to be on my radar. Then at 7:30, I don't have the SEC network, so I will not watch Kentucky and Florida. Of course, I'll be checking the scores. We've got Indiana, Virginia on the Big Ten Network, and so maybe these are some options if Texas A&M and Clemson gets out of hand early. But I'll be watching those games, and then of course at 8 o'clock, Penn State and Pitt would be secondary for me to Texas A&M, Clemson, if it's close. But Penn State and Pitt is going to be on a screen here at 8 o'clock on ABC. Then throughout the night, is there anything else? Oh, obviously, 8:30. I can't imagine that the number one game doesn't become for me USC and Stanford at 8:30 on Fox. And then later that night, Cal BYU might be something to watch. And certainly once it hits 10:45, and most likely there's going to be some drama either with Pitt Penn State or USC Stanford. So I'm going to watch the conclusion of those games. And then we've got Michigan State, Arizona State at 10:45. So that game's not going to be over until after 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. But depending on circumstances, I may do a live stream after Michigan State, Arizona State, near the end of the day, middle of the night, and we'll conclude it there. So we are going to be back throughout the day after the noon games, the 3:30 games, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock games, and possibly after Michigan State, Arizona State, if it's worth talking about at that point. So instant analysis throughout the day. And I will play off the comment that was made just a few minutes ago by our guy, Gable Kane. Hopefully I got that right. If I screwed that up, I apologize. Gable's Kane, who had a great endorsement for our live streams throughout the day with our instant analysis all day Saturday. Chris Kim, I have yet to see you host to Mark Rogers TV. So you're making a comment today. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. All right. Yeah, Chris Kim, if a conference championship game doesn't mean much for the committee, what's the purpose of a conference championship game? Bernard Baker, first time to Mark Rogers TV and commenting on the live chat. Bernard, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Drevley, have yet to see you on Mark Rogers TV. This is the voice of college football. Please check out the videos. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry to talk college football each and every day, and analysis from myself as well. So we are the voice of college football. You will not be disappointed if you love the discussion, the debate, the analysis of college football. Rankings, ratings, predictions, previews, instant analysis. We've got it all right here. Or Sinus Orca 78. Good to see you, Dennis Wilson, as well. Again, Drevley looking for Nkosi Perry sighting today. William Lee, good to see you. Anybody else in the chat? Green Man joining us today. Zoom play in NCIS Fanatic 21, getting into it about Ohio State and TCU. And there's a bit of hyperbole on both sides, especially from what I've seen on the side of Zoom play concerning the talent level at TCU. Gary Patterson is one of the very best coaches in the country, probably in the top 5 to 8. Exceptional coach. He has built a program based on speed and finding diamonds in the rough. TCU is really good, really fast, talented. They are playing a different level opponent next week. We'll see. I will make a prediction. Of course, we will preview the game and discuss it all week. TCU, Ohio State. Just keep in mind, you're not playing SMU. You're not even playing a number of teams that you play in the Pac-12. And Ohio State, the same thing. This is not Oregon State. This is not Rutgers. It's going to be most likely a really good game. Who has the most talent? Well, there's no question Ohio State has a better roster than TCU. We can talk all we want about players in space and speed, and Turpin's great, and Rieger's really good. I understand that. But top to bottom, it's like how many times did we come across? It was twice. Oregon, Ohio State in the 2010 Rose Bowl and the 2014 National Championship game. And I had to listen for 6 weeks about how Oregon was too fast and too speedy and all this other business for Ohio State. And that was a joke, because if you looked at the rosters and would tell me at any time during that period, okay, look at an Oregon roster, look at an Ohio State roster, how many of these players on each roster are going to be playing in the NFL in 5 years? It's not even close. And the same thing with TCU and Ohio State. That doesn't mean TCU can't beat Ohio State. Iowa beat Ohio State last year. Certainly it can happen, but there's no legitimate comparison of the two rosters top to bottom. Out of that TCU roster that will come to play in Dallas next week, 100-man roster, what do they have, about 15 NFL players, and maybe Ohio State has 35 or 40. So that's all I'm saying. You can't compare the rosters in one game based on coaching, readiness, the functionality of the offense and defense, the schemes, the techniques, everything involved. Yes, better teams lose, more talented teams. I'm not saying Ohio State's better. I don't know if they're better. Time will tell. We'll know in the next week, and especially the next 6 weeks, if they're better than TCU. I've got to think at this point that they are. All right. What do we got? But it'll be funny to watch you guys get after it next week after the game. So just with all the trash talking between Zoom Play and NCIS Fanatic 21, I will ask the same thing that I asked at the entire offseason when I heard the back and forth between the LSU fans and the Miami fans. Just show up after the game. Just show up after the game, regardless of the result. Be ready and willing and ready to stomp somebody down if your team wins, but also be ready to take a beating and show up if your team loses, if you're talking trash. Great slate of games today. Yeah, we're marching them down, Arsenis Orca. I don't know if you caught us earlier, but I was going through what my TV schedule looks like. And again, I will go back and I completed the run. So it's basically Mississippi State, Kansas State for me at noon, with an eye on Duke Northwestern, Arizona, Houston, and Georgia Tech, South Florida. Then at 1 o'clock, Oklahoma, UCLA comes on my radar, but I'm watching the other games. And then we'll see what happens if the Bruins can pull off a stunner and just stay in the game. Then at 3:30, all my attention goes to Georgia, South Carolina, first and foremost, with Nebraska and Colorado secondary, and Ohio State Rutgers, just because they're one of the best teams in the country. But it's basically going to be Georgia, South Carolina, and Nebraska, Colorado at 3:30. Then, boom, at 5 o'clock, Iowa State jumps onto the radar with, of course, the other games in play. And I'm going to watch the best games. I'm going to watch the closest games in the fourth quarter. But Iowa State at 5 o'clock really means something for me. I like that game. And then at 7 o'clock, Clemson, Texas A&M hit the field. But, of course, if Iowa State's close, I'm watching that. And there were a few other games in there. But then at 8 o'clock, Pitt and Penn State probably takes a secondary viewing for me to Texas A&M Clemson, depending, again, on how close the games are. 8:30, Stanford USC will be number one, and the other two will be periphery, again, unless something gets out of hand. And then we've got a few other West Coast games that have marginal significance. But then, bam, Michigan State, Arizona State, precedence right there for me to watch that game. Like to remind everyone that we do have the phone line on 860-325-3687. And we'll take calls for the next few minutes. 860-325-3687. The number goes in the chat. There it is. All right, so we've got previews on Georgia, South Carolina, USC, Stanford, Kentucky, Florida. I wanted to ask Zoe about his adjusted thoughts on the Coastal Division. Much of the talk on my channel has been about the ACC championship game all offseason, the Clemson-Miami rematch. After watching Virginia Tech dismantle Florida State and watching Miami struggle mightily against LSU, we need to rethink the Coastal. And most of these teams will not be in ACC play for the next few weeks. Virginia Tech has 3 layups the next 3 weeks and then go to Duke. That will be interesting. Miami, of course, has Florida State coming up soon. Florida State plays Syracuse next week. And so the Coastal Division now suddenly becomes interesting in that Miami is yet to play a conference game, of course, but based on what they played and showed us on the field in Dallas last week, we've got to rethink the Coastal. I'm not saying Virginia Tech is now the front runner. I'm just saying they have a hurdle past them in the ACC, and they defeated that hurdle somewhat easily and surprisingly in that one. 860-325-3687. Otherwise, I may get off the line and have some time to get something to eat and do a few chores before we hit noon in all the big games. And I will see you guys later today. Again, we will have instant analysis after most of the big games throughout the day. So I'm going to try to hit those gaps between the noon and the 3:30 game, 3:30, 7 o'clock game after the primetime games, and maybe if I can still get off the couch at that point after Michigan State, Arizona State, which is going to be about a 10:45 kickoff, 3.5-hour game, is going to be about 2:15 in the morning Eastern time. But maybe we'll have to say something on Michigan State, Arizona State as the Big Ten tries to not have a letdown this week. And the possible pitfall for the Big Ten would be that game in particular, and also Penn State playing on the road at Pitt at Heinz Field. And the other one could be Nebraska hosting Colorado after the Buffs showed us something against CSU last week. So the three, and then there's, of course, Iowa, Iowa State. So 4 games that the Big Ten needs to show up this week would be, again, Penn State going to Pitt, Iowa hosting Iowa State, Nebraska hosting Colorado, and the other game, Michigan State going out west to take on Arizona State. So the Big Ten is not facing any huge opponents this week, as they will be next week with TCU, or they did last week with Notre Dame, but they need to win those games, or the perception of the Big Ten will change mightily, especially if Penn State loses, and to a lesser degree, Michigan State. But if Michigan State and Penn State go down, or one of them goes down, then that does not look good for what many people considered to be the best conference in America the entire off season. So there's already a loss out of one of the big teams in the Big Ten, in Michigan losing to Notre Dame and not looking good. It not being an extremely close game. Notre Dame was the better team most of that game. Michigan did make it close at the end and came within 1 score. Michigan State is deeper, but Arizona State has the best 3 or 4 players on the field. You would think with at least N'Keal Harry in particular. Arizona State's going to win, according to Jamie. I am selecting Michigan State to win the game, Arizona State to cover the 6. Check out my prediction video. 12-7 against the spread last week, 19-4 overall. And here are the predictions right here. I predicted $26 games. I went beyond the top 25 and I took on Duke, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, South Florida, Arizona, Houston, Iowa, Iowa State, Kentucky, and Florida. I went beyond the top 25 games. I think Florida's ranked 25th, but I went beyond the top 25 games to also pull in some other relevant games. All right, one last shot at the call-in. The phone number is 860-325-3687. Yes, in the future, I will have that posted graphically, but it's 860-325-3687 if anybody wants to call. Otherwise, appreciate you guys jumping on the line and stirring up the live chat during the big show, the kickoff. And this show will get even better in future weeks as we basically set you up for the games on Saturday. And so always, whether it's the newsletter, whether it's the live streams, whether it's the videos from day to day, the daily grind, whether it's this particular show, the kickoff show on Saturday morning, I would like your suggestions on how it can be better. Subscribe to the newsletter. If there's anybody online right now watching me right this second or watching the replay, and if you have yet to subscribe to the newsletter, we will not clutter your inbox. It will be 1 mailing per week, maybe 2 in the postseason, possibly once we hit bowl season, but it's going to be 1 per week. And I believe if you talk to any of the people that subscribe to the newsletter right now, the Voice of College Football, that we got some extremely positive feedback on our first edition last week. So subscribe to the newsletter. Send your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. And again, like the videos. Please comment. whether that's debating with me or supporting me or telling me I'm an idiot or making a suggestion on content or guests that I should have on or whatever it is that you have to say. I want to hear from you. You've got your voice. We are the voice of college football. Your voice, my voice, the voice of the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry as well. We will see you in a few hours with analysis of the early games. Appreciate the support. Subscribe to the newsletter. Subscribe to the channel. Let's drive Mark Rogers TV to a better place. See you soon. Enjoy the football games.